Morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us. We will resume chapter 25, verse 30. We already were discussing this pasuk yesterday. Esav asked Yaakov for that red stuff. So it says in the pasuk, and therefore, Esav was known as Edom. We had two different pshatim so far as to why Esav was known as Edom, because he referred to the red stuff. So one pshat was the Ramban. The Ramban said that people would make fun of Esav, like, you fool, you sold the birthright just for that red stuff. The Or HaChaim says that the pshat is that Esav called himself Edom because he felt he only survived thanks to that red stuff. So he felt like every step moving forward was thanks to that red stuff. Just one more pshat on this before we move on. There's a very interesting kliyakar on this pasuk, kliyakar on pasuk lamed. Alkein karashmo Edom, mashalo karo Edom miyad. So the kliyakar starts with a great question. This is not his first context of red. When he was born, he's described in the pasuk as coming out red. So if somebody thought it was a good idea to call him red, what took them so long? He looked red when he came out. So the kliyakar says, that's nothing terribly new. There are babies that come out looking kind of ruddy, so that wasn't so unique for Esav, and therefore it didn't make sense to call him red just because of how he looked when he came out. Okay. Skipping a couple lines. The obvious question for someone who viewed the event with Esav, with the lentils, would be, why can't he just call them lentils? Why does he refer to them as red? It must be that he's sort of revealing something about himself, that what really fascinated him about these lentils was not as much the quality of the lentils themselves, but the fact that they were red. So now, it's more than just an interesting thing that he referred to the lentils as red. This seems to say that there's something about his essence that connects to things being red. That's why he was attracted to the redness of the lentils. So it must be, he's like born under a constellation of red, and that he's inclined to shed blood. Edom. So the kliyakar then goes on to say, in the very same pasuk, when Esav refers to lentils as red, he says, because I'm tired. Give me that red stuff because I'm tired. So Rashi says what it means. He's tired. Rashi cites a pasuk in Yirmiyah that exhaustion sometimes is associated with murder. So he killed. So the kliyakar suggests that he's explaining why he's so interested in the redness of the lentils, because he shed blood, and that's sort of his nature. So that's that. And presumably where this all runs back to is this was a whole new perspective on his coming out with a red complexion to begin with. So just an interesting kliyakar to think about. Okay, let's move on to verse 34. V'Yaakov nosan le'Esav lechem u'nezid adoshim. So they made a deal. Yaakov says, I'll give you this in exchange for the birthright. So Yaakov gave to Esav bread and lentils. Vayocha vayesh, Esav ate and drank. Vayakam vayelach, and he got up and went. Vayivez Esav eshab chora, and Esav disgraced the birthright. That last phrase is very interesting. What do I learn from the fact that it says Esav disgraced the birthright? What do I learn from that? So why did Shmuel say that? So Rashi on pasuk lam daled v'yivas Esav heira kasav al risho shebiza avodaso shamakom. The Torah is giving us testimony of his wickedness, that he disgraced the service of God. Here it is. When we're talking about the birthright from Yitzchak, it's not about how many cars you'll inherit. That's not what the idea is. The idea is bearing the right privilege sort of carrying the legacy of Abraham forward to the next generation, Yitzchak, and now the next generation. And so the fact that he sold it for a bowl of lentils shows that he disgraced the birthright. Now, presumably the intent, according to this medrash that Rashi is citing, is that you might very well look at this story and say, poor Esav, he was desperate. He was starving. Yaakov really ripped him off. So the point is, the Torah is giving us clarity about how to view the story. The reason he did it is not because he was desperate. The reason he did it is because he saw the birthright as being worth not much more than a bowl of lentils in normal circumstances. That's presumably the pshat according to Rashi. So the Torah is giving us perspective on how to view the story. Okay, now let's go to the Ramban. Ramban on Lamed Daled. Vayivas Esav es habchora, baz ladovar yichavel lo. Aval kvar amra atam shebavuro nos l'mechirim b'reisha yeholich lamos b'tzudo achayos. V'karav hu sheyamus b'chayi aviv. Ve'ein lebechora shrom ma'ala rak acharei ha'av. Uma toil lo habechora. So the Ramban starts off very interestingly. The Ramban says, well, let's just clarify where Esav was coming from. He said in the previous pasuk or two pasukim before, I'm going to die. So why do I need the birthright? So the point is, the idea of the birthright is if you survive your parent. So he thinks he's going to die any day. So what good is it to have the birthright? What value does it have to Esav if he dies before Yitzchak does? So that's why he sells the birthright. Ve'omar vayocha vayesh vayakam vayilach vayivas vayives ke'achasha achal v'shasa chazar asad el tsedo v'zusibas bizoy abchora ki chayfetz b'ksilim rak sheyochlu v'yishtu v'yasu chaftzam be'itam v'lo yachushlu yom machar. So the Ramban says, you know what it means that he disgraced the birthright? This should have been his aha moment. This should have been a moment where he thought to himself, wow, this is crazy. It makes more sense for me to get a bowl of lentils than a birthright because I'm living such a dangerous lifestyle. And what happens right after he makes the deal? Gets up, eats, drinks, gets up and goes right back to his regular life of not knowing if he'll be around tomorrow, the dangerous lifestyle that he was leading. So that's the idea that by making that decision, he disgraced the concept of inheritance. He disgraced the concept of tomorrow. He disgraced the concept of legacy. That's how the Ramban is explained. It's very interesting. He really doesn't like what the Ibn Ezra says over here. We've seen this Ramban at length at least once or twice. We're going to see it for the next few minutes, but we're not going to continue it tomorrow. That's my dramatic statement. So the Ibn Ezra says, you know why he disgraced the birthright? Because he got to look at his father's 401k and he wasn't impressed. So he said, who needs the birthright? My father doesn't have any money anyway. V'rabim yitma'u ki azav lo Avram mamon rab. And many ask, how could you say that? Avraham was wealthy. So the Ibn Ezra says, I don't know why people think that's a good question. It happens all the time that wealthy people at one phase in their life become impoverished at a later phase of life. Yes, there was a certain point in time that Avram was wealthy. Who says? Who says he was always wealthy? And who says Yitzchak was always wealthy? Who says Yitzchak was ever wealthy? Says the Ibn Ezra, you know what the ultimate proof is that Yitzchak didn't have money? It says in the pasuk that Yitzchak loved Esav because of his gain. What does that imply? That implies that the only way Yitzchak can have a good supper is if Esav went hunting for him, meaning that Yitzchak couldn't afford to go to the butcher shop himself. He needed Esav to go hunting for him. The ilu hayalechem rav v'veis aviv v'u nichbad be'einav lo machar es b'charaso b'avur nasid. It doesn't make sense, says the Ibn Ezra, that just on a financial level, why would you trade a bowl of lentils for wealth? How could it be? It must be that there wasn't wealth there. If his father lived a luxurious lifestyle, why would he tell him, you have to bring me game? So you have all kinds of questions here that the Ibn Ezra poses. First of all, it's very clear Yaakov took Esav's fine clothing to disguise himself as Esav, right? What does that imply? That implies that Yaakov didn't have such great clothing. Why is it that when Yaakov goes off on his journey, he has like nothing? Why couldn't his mother send him with something? All these things seem to point to there wasn't money in the family. We have a pasuk that the Yitzchak became a great man, implying he became wealthy. Kodem Ziknaso. Ramban says, I'll tell you that was earlier in his life. He became wealthy and he lost it. Okay, let's skip the next few lines and let's jump into Vanitama. Ramban says, Vanitama mi iver ene sichlo bazeh. I don't know why the Ibn Ezra thinks this. Kine Avram hiniach lohon rav. Avram left behind great wealth for Yitzchak. V'yavara oshar hu miyad kodem winyan hazeh. V'pnei zeh bazas habachora. Ki adavar hazeh haya benu reim kodem yos leis of nashim kasher yisapar kasov. V'achrei kein chazav v'hesher beretz plishtim ad ki godal ma'od. Ramban says, first of all, I don't understand something. Later on in this parsha, it talks about Yitzchak's wealth, and it talks about the Plishtim being jealous, which sounds like Yitzchak was a wealthy man. So why would you think that Yitzchak lost all his wealth before this story? So he goes on to say, I'm just going to jump to a few things now. He says, V'yitachin ki pi hashnayim b'bechorah k'mishpatei haTorah lo hoya kein lifnim rak linchom malas ha'av usraraso she'elo kavod u'malal tziro. The Ramban says it's distinctly possible that the idea of the birthright in this context was not a double portion of the estate, and though the Torah has that concept later on, but he said it could very well be the idea of the birthright was to really, the way we were speaking earlier today, sort of be the prominent person in the family after the father passes. They're to sort of carry the prominence of the father. By the way, the Ramban says this thing about the game with Esav, that was sort of a choice type of thing. That didn't mean that Yitzchak was sitting there starving at home. It was a special skill that Esav had. He was able to get very quality things. The thing about asking Esav to bring food for him before the bracha wasn't because he didn't have food. It's because he wanted to give Esav a mitzvah and have them connect in this way. This is a very famous discussion here. So we discussed this morning the Kli Yakar regarding his unique pshat about why Esav is called red. We discussed Rashi and the Ramban regarding what does it mean that Esav disgraced the birthright. We also discussed the Ibn Ezra and the Ramban regarding the question of how much or little there was of a financial estate to inherit from Yitzchak.